Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is the Google Nexus 9, which is an 8.9-inch tablet, which is made by HTC, sold by Google, and it's sort of Google's vision of what a tablet can and perhaps should be in late 2014. The Nexus line is sort of their flagship line of products for developers and enthusiasts, and to showcase the latest and greatest, and this is one of the first devices that actually ships with Android 5.0 Lollipop software. HTC has an interesting history with the Nexus line. It was actually the maker of the first Nexus 1 smartphone, which came out in 2010. We haven't seen an HTC Nexus device since then, but we also haven't seen a lot of HTC tablets since then. So this is the first tablet from HTC to meet the Nexus lineup, and the first tablet from HTC in a couple of years, and it's a really pretty nice device. It sells for about $399 and up, which makes it about the same price as a first-generation iPad Air, a little bit cheaper than an iPad Air 2, but more expensive than something like last year's Nexus 7 tablet, which had a starting price of $229. New models got a bigger screen, a much faster processor, and I think the price is justified if you need a tablet with a bigger screen and a faster processor. It's got an NVIDIA Tegra K1 64-bit CPU, which is one of the fastest processors that I've had a chance to benchmark. Now, I run a website that really focuses on affordable portable machines, so I don't necessarily test a lot of high-end devices, but I can say that it does come out ahead of the Nexus 6, which has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 805 processor, in all the benchmarks that I've tested it on. It also has stereo front-facing speakers here. It's what HTC calls the boom sound speakers, and they are pretty loud and pretty clear. There's a micro USB port and a headset jack, and that's about it in terms of ports. There's no micro SD card slot. That's something that most of the recent Nexus line don't have. We've got a power and volume button here, and you'll notice that the sides are kind of sloped up, so the bottom is a little bit, or the back of the device is a little bit wider than the top, and then that slopes up. So when you place this flat down on the table, it makes it a little bit easier to reach these buttons than it would be on last year's model, which has a sort of curved side and buttons facing the bottom. So when you're holding it, it's easy to reach the buttons. When it's down, it's kind of hard to poke at those. This way, either way, it's pretty easy to get the buttons. One nice feature of the Nexus 9 is that you also, like most tablets, you might wind up holding it in any different position. It can be hard to figure out, wait, where was the power button again? You don't need the power button. You can just put it down, tap the screen twice, and the screen comes on. So it has that functionality as well. There's an option to enable the ability to wake it with just your voice as well, so that you can turn it off and just say, "Okay, Google," and have it wake up and start a search. I don't think I turned that on right now, but you saw how it works when it's already turned on. Let's see what happens here. Okay, Google. Okay, I did turn that on. So I can search the web, and now it's going to search for everything I'm saying. There we go. So you can wake it with your voice, you can wake it by tapping, and so on. In terms of hardware, as I mentioned, there's a Tegra K1 processor. It has 2 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of storage, or 32 gigs, depending on which model you get, and there's an option for, this is a Wi-Fi only version, there's an option for a model with 4G LTE. That sells for $599 and has 32 gigs of storage. The 16 gig Wi-Fi only model starts at $399, and it's $479 if you want the 32 gig version. Wi-Fi performance is pretty great. It has 802.11ac Wi-Fi, and I've had no problems with connectivity. Been able to stream videos, surf the web, do all sorts of other things. You might also notice that this has a 2048 by 1536 pixel display. It's a 4:3 aspect ratio as opposed to the widescreen displays that we've seen on some other tablets. And what that means is that some content that you might want to watch, say movies or TV shows, might look, they might get some extra black bars on the top and the bottom. Let's brighten the screen a little bit here. But overall, things look pretty good, and if you were watching older videos that were made for TV in the non-HD era, you're going to get better screen space there. Now, where this aspect ratio comes in handy is for things like reading. So let's take a look at, for instance, some online magazines. Well, actually, here's the Google Play newsstand. My library magazines. So we've got this high resolution screen, and a 4:3 aspect ratio, and things look pretty good here. Now we're actually going to dim the screen because it's messing with the camera. So things look pretty good from here. I think magazines are sort of a tough sell no matter how you look at it, because digital magazines tend to be scans of the print versions of those magazines, and the text is really sort of designed for maybe an 11-inch page. So on an 8.9-inch screen is a little bit tricky. If you had a tablet with an 11-inch screen, it might be a little bit heavier and tougher to hold. This guy weighs less than a pound, feels pretty comfortable in the hand. It's lighter than some hardcover books, so it's pretty easy to hold for a long time when you're reading. So reading ebooks I think is great. Reading magazines can be a little bit tougher because you might sort of have to pinch and zoom in order to scroll around. Now, a lot of magazine apps do have flowing text mode, and so that gives you this sort of easier to read version, but then you lose a little bit of the appeal. What I think works really great, on the other hand, are comic books. I find that I read a lot of comic books on the Nexus 7, but the screen's just a little too small. Now, on the other hand, when you read those same comics on the 8.9-inch high-resolution screen here, they look great. You can see they take up most of the screen. There's a little bit of border around the sides, but you don't have to go in panel by panel. You don't have to pinch to zoom. It's pretty easy to make out the text. So using Marvel Unlimited, Comixology, other applications, I think digital comics look great. And even though I don't necessarily feel like I need an 8.9-inch tablet when I've already got a 7-inch model, the comic reading experience has really made me kind of want this. Web browser works pretty well. And you can see that, again, with Android 5.0, you get the material design for the keyboard, recent apps menu, and in general, the operating system has been redesigned so that you've got double tap to pull down from the top, support for a flashlight from the quick settings, lighter color scheme in general, and a more consistent user interface than I think we've seen in Android for a while. So in general, I think Android 5.0 is a big improvement, and one of the reasons to get something like the Nexus 9 is that it's going to be one of the first devices to ship with Android 5.0, but it will be rolling out as well to the Nexus 7, to the Nexus 6, to the Nexus 5, and the Nexus 4. So if you have any recent Nexus device, you're going to get the same operating system. The real advantages, I think, to getting the Nexus 9 tablet are the stereo front-facing speakers, which are pretty good, the high-quality screen, the fast processor, which lets you... well, honestly, the fast processor might be overkill at this point, but it's a little bit more future-proof. As one of the first 64-bit devices in the Nexus lineup, I haven't found any apps that you can run here that you can't also run on something with a slower processor, but everything does run pretty well as long as it's been updated for Android 5.0. As of November 3rd, there are some applications that haven't really been designed for Android 5.0. So, for instance, the Amazon Kindle app works, the Amazon Instant Video and Amazon Shopping app, on the other hand, aren't necessarily optimized. Here's a 3D game, just to see how that works. Now, I expect that most of those applications will be updated pretty soon. But sort of the perils of using a new operating system on day one is that you might run into some apps that just aren't really designed for it. So games work well, multitasking works pretty well, and overall I'm pretty impressed with the Nexus 9. The only real question is, can you justify spending $399 on a tablet at a time when there are many cheaper options available? But those cheaper options don't have the Tegra K1 processor, the high-resolution 4:3 aspect ratio display, and so forth. So this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and a look at the Google Nexus 9. You can find more details about the tablet, photos, benchmark results, and more at liliputing.com.